Hello, welcome everybody. It's 10 o'clock here in Germany at least. I want to welcome everybody for this 11th ISoRED webinar. Welcome everybody. I think it's great to get together in these times where other things seem to dominate everything. It's great to focus on radiation research. We have this webinar here. Today there is a very important institution presenting itself. It's the Bundesamt für Strahlenschutz, Federal Office of Radiation Protection from Germany. And we will have an overview of several speakers from this institute. I'll say a bit more in a minute. Housekeeping issues are that please mute your microphone. But be prepared to unmute it quickly after each presentation so that you can ask a quick question. I would then say the name of people who raise their hand. And this way, despite the full schedule, we probably have the chance of a bit of interaction. I will probably remind the speakers towards the end of their time, just to give everybody an opportunity to have the full time available. The BfS will be introduced, I think, by the first speaker more, but I think from my point of view, it's great to have such an institution. It's a government institution. It's part of the German Ministry of Environment, and nevertheless, it is really highly scientifically oriented and with scientists employed and with active in research. And I think Michaela will give an overview of how this research is done. This is really great. It's very important in supporting radiation protection work, ICRP, also the German Radiation Protection Commission. And so it's great to have this connection to government here. And I want to introduce the first speaker, which is Michaela Kreuzer. Michaela is an epidemiologist. As I said before, we once shared an office back in the 90s. She's in Munich, like all the speakers here. And before I start, I probably forgot to introduce myself. I'm Michael Hauptmann. I'm doing a lot of radiation research since many years. I'm here in Brandenburg Medical School near Berlin. And so we turn to the other side of Germany now, Munich, 600 miles south. And the floor is yours, Michaela.
Thank you very much, Michael, for these kind words. I try to share my presentation. Here it is.
Yes, very good.
Can you see it?
Yes.
So Michael said it already. I will present the federal information on the Federal Office for Radiation Protection. And it's a pleasure for me to have this opportunity to briefly introduce our office. I will focus particularly on the research activities with focus on epidemiology and dosimetry, because we are very happy about this new society, ISoRED. So let me start. Some brief words about our office. It was founded in 1989. This was a political decision after the Chernobyl accident in '87. And as Michael said, we are a scientific technical higher federal authority, and we are in the portfolio of the Federal Ministry of the Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety. We have around 550 employees, so we are a relatively large institution, and around 200 scientists, and we are very interdisciplinary. I think that's a big advantage for epidemiologists because the full expertise is in this institution. And most of our employees are in a permanent position. I think this is also a difference to universities. And we have several BfS locations. You see here the map. The headquarters is in the middle of Germany in Salzgitter. And the epidemiology and dosimetry group, we are sitting in the south, in Munich, and in Cottbus, in the competence center of electromagnetic fields. There will be also in the future, some epidemiologists. What is the organizational structure of the BfS? Our president is Inge Paulini. And you see here we have 4 scientific departments. One department, the first on emergency preparedness and response. The second on environmental radiation. And the third on effects and risks of ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Here is the epidemiology group. And we have one group on medical and occupational radiation protection. And here is the dosimetry group of Augusto Giussani located. What are our radiation research networks? So first of all, the BfS is since many years a WHO collaborating center for ionizing and non-ionizing radiation and health. And we support WHO on many features in these topics. In the field of European radiation research, most of you may know, so we are very active in all these European radiation research platforms. We had been one of the initiators of MELODY. It's a platform on low-dose research. We are active in EuroDos, a platform on dosimetry, Euromed in the medical field, Alliance, radio ecology field, SHARE, so social sciences and risk communication, very important, and also NERIS, the emergency preparedness platform. We have coordinated this large project, you may know, CONCERT. So one of our major aims is really to integrate European research in all these different fields. And we are also active in RENEPS. This is a European network on biological dosimetry and retrospective physical dosimetry. And we are operating STOR and are involved in groups of ICRP, ICNIRP, and UNSCIR, and so on. Now I come specifically to our research, and here I think there's specific for our office, as in contrast to universities and other research institutions, that we have different research ways. The first is departmental research. This is, we implement, on behalf of our ministry, we implement and fund research, and external researchers can apply for such projects. And here are some examples for, we are running a large research program on radiation protection and power grid expansion with more than 40 projects and also 7 epidemiological projects. We work on, have several projects on causes of childhood leukemia, which is a focus, and particularly as a program, the project on process. It is a program to calculate the probability of causation. This was performed by the Helmholtz Center of Munich. But on the other hand, we also conduct own research, and here, for example, in the epidemiology groups, a large uranium minor cohort study, some pooled studies, and we have a uranium biobank and molecular epidemiological studies, and we will further develop the software process. And hopefully, if everything really works, we will start with a large cohort on mobile phone use. And of course, we have also third-party funded research. And here we are coordinating currently the new European project RADONORM, managing risks from radon and norm. Now a few words to the department effects and risks of ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. It consists of 5 sections, and we are in total about 75 people in this department with more than 55 scientists and 5 PhD students. And the 5 sections, you can see it here. In the middle is the radiation epidemiology group, but we have also a very large radiation biology group and a lot of collaboration with the epidemiologists, a biological dosimetry group, and we have 2 non-ionizing sections. One on optical radiation and this new competence center on electromagnetic fields in Cottbus. And for sure, the most important group for epidemiologists are the dosimetrists. And here we collaborate with Augusto. And this last slide simply shows you in more detail these two groups, the section Radiation Epidemiology, which is headed by Peter Scholz-Kreisel. And you see 7 epidemiologists and a big group. And the section from Augusto Giussani, external and internal dosimetry and biokinetics, also a large group. And in the competence center, electromagnetic fields, we are just looking, we have 2 vacant positions, permanent positions for epidemiologists. And I think I will stop here and the other presentations will follow and you can ask questions.
Thank you very much, Michaela. Very well in time. Thanks for this overview. Michaela has said that we will hear about some of these aspects in more detail in the next talks. Are there any questions to Michaela? Let me try to see the participants. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, or if I don't immediately see it, just start talking. Maybe to get discussion started, Michaela, the organization reminds me a little bit of the NCI, the intramural and extramural program. How do you in the office or in the institution prioritize which research should be done and for which research money should be used, and whether you do it yourself or whether you invite people to apply for funding?
So you mean the departmental research program? Or
any research? I mean, also,
yes.
I mean, can we, how do you decide what's important in radiation and what will be done or should be done?
So first of all, I think a major point is that we only start projects which have a clear focus for our government, so which results in any improvement of the legislation or regulations or anything. So the priority is simply, is there a major uncertainty that has an influence on any regulation? That's, I think, the overall arching topic, which may be different to other institutions. And of course, we look for uncertainties. We look at the reviews and at UNSCEAR, ICRP, all these open questions, and then we really prioritize what is important for regulation and so on, together with our ministry.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll know more at the end of this discussion of what you in the past thought should be done now. Okay, thanks, Michaela. I don't see any other questions at the moment, but please just start speaking. Okay, if that's not the case, then I suggest we move to the next speaker. That's Dr. Heinzl. He's a postdoctoral researcher at the BfS, and he's talking about the program that Michaela mentioned, the software to calculate radiation risks called PROCESS. Okay. Yeah, I think you are set up. Very good.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Then we can start. In my talk, I would like to introduce the PROCESS software to you. PROCESS is a program for calculation of the probability of causation of cancer by radiation exposure. It is important for compensation claims regarding radiation-related occupational diseases, and it was developed at the Helmholtz Center in Munich by an order of the German Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety, and the Federal Office for Radiation Protection in Germany. Its functionality is similar to the US program IRAP of the US Institute NIOSH. What is meant by probability of causation of radiation. Let us imagine the following situation. Someone suffers from cancer and was previously exposed to ionizing radiation at work. And now the question arises, how likely is it that the cancer was caused by occupational radiation exposure? That is the probability of causation of radiation. How likely is it depends on several parameters, and on the right side you can see how to enter data on these factors in the process interface. For example, the biological sex and the birth year of the person concerned, the diagnosis and the year of diagnosis. In the case of lung cancer and external low LET radiation, smoking behavior can also be taken into account. And in the section below, you can enter equivalent doses for each year. Please note that these doses have been determined by experts beforehand. And you can also see that 3 types of radiation can be considered in process. The low LET radiation in the tab General, radon in mines, and radon in Nora. This slide gives us an overview of all types of cancer implemented in process, solid cancers, as well as hematopoietic malignant diseases are considered in process. And the probability of causation of radiation Z can be calculated by this formula. And here, lambda 0 is the baseline incidence risk. EAR is the excess absolute risk caused by radiation. And ERR is the excess relative risk caused by radiation. And the functions to calculate these terms are implemented in process and are called automatically within the algorithm to calculate the individual probability of causation of radiation. And the excess risk estimates are based on risk models obtained from epidemiological studies. So for lung cancer after exposure to radon in mines, the risk model is based on the Wismut study. Nora Fenske will tell us more about this study right after my talk. For lung cancer after exposure to indoor radon, the Darby study is the basis for the risk estimates. And for most other exposures, the risk models are mainly based on the lifespan study. So the risk estimates are derived from study populations. Commonly, the study populations, for example, the lifespan study, differs from the German population with respect to ethnicity, lifestyle, dietary, and other features. So the risk estimates derived from the study population need to be transferred to the German population. And in process, a mix of an additive and a multiplicative risk transfer is used for this transfer. F here is the relative weight for the multiplicative risk transfer. So F equals to 1 results in a multiplicative risk transfer, and F equals to 0 results in an additive risk transfer. major advantage of process is that uncertainties can be considered. For example, the uncertainties for exposure values and dose values can be expressed by distributions. For low dose rates, large uncertainties can be used. Distributions are assumed for model parameters like the parameter f, or for example the latency period. And instead of one model, multiple models can be used for inference. And the algorithm works as follows. In each iteration step, a model is selected randomly. For each parameter, a value is sampled from its distribution, and finally, a set value is calculated. So, altogether we get 25,000 set values, and the figure on the right side shows the distribution function of the distribution of all these set values. And the median of all these set values is a good estimate of the probability of causation. In our case, this estimate is 0.23. This estimate is lower than 0.5. Even the upper limit of the 95% of the uncertainty interval is lower than 0.5. So it is more likely that the cancer was caused by factors other than occupational radiation exposure. And finally, I would like to point out a few special features of process. It is possible to enter the history of exposures in detail. The entries can be made by hand via the software interface or by importing an Excel template. And process can also be used if a person suffers from multiple cancers. The software process is free of charge. It's available in English and German, and includes a help file and a tutorial, and it can be downloaded from this link. For further information, see the paper of the developers of process, a summary of Maria Schnelzer and others, and the information material on our homepage. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Are there any questions on this talk?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for the very good and clear presentation. It was very well done and really outlined the major features of the process. And as one of the developers of this program process, I would like to congratulate my colleagues from Helmholtz Centrum and colleagues from the BfS that they keep the momentum of the development and continue improving and developing further this important epidemiological tool, which has a number of distinctive features, which makes it a really distinctive instrument for the assessment. For example, it was already mentioned, but I would like to also to stress that in process, the modeling of the full model uncertainty is taken into account. That means not only the risk attributed parameter uncertainty is accounted for, but also the parameter which describe the model baseline. And this is not commonly done by other tools. And this, for example, in case of diseases like leukemia, where the excess and baseline are approximately equal probability, then these parameters, uncertainty to the baseline part and to the risk attributed part can be really influential and significant. So this is, and also it was also mentioned that the multimodal inference principle is widely and systematically used in the process, and this is also makes it very distinctive tool, I think I would say, on the global scale. And again, thank you very much for the nice presentation, and I'm very much delighted to see that this important development ongoing and improving and living. Thank you.
Thanks for your question,
Thanks
and I can only agree. I have another question here, but I think we should move on. I just want to stress that using these tools is really important for translating risks to the public. And there's also, NCI also has a tool, RAD, which calculates risks from, for example, diagnostic exposures, and I can only recommend it to every epidemiologist to use it and apply it to realistic settings to see what it really means for people. Okay, thank you very much. We have to move on. Would you please, Dr. Heinzl, stop sharing your screen? The next speaker is Nora Fenske. She's also a postdoctoral researcher, and she will present the Wismut study, the uranium miners study, and the plans and ongoing projects in this study.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope that you are able to see everything. Perfect. My name is Nora Fenske. I have been working at the BfS for 7 years now. I'm originally a statistician, now rather a radiation epidemiologist, and my focus of work is the German uranium miners study, and that's why I will give an overview of it today. So let's start with a very simple question. Where were the mines located in Germany? So as you can see here, mines were located in the Middle East part of Germany, in the Ore Mountains, in Saxony and Thuringia. And the operating period of the mines were from 1946, after the Second World War, until 1990, so after the fall of the wall. And then in the 1990s, after the German reunion, it was decided that this German uranium miners cohort is established. This is a very large cohort study with almost or around 59,000 male former employees of the Wismut company, and it also includes almost 4,000 women. And altogether, this is one of the largest cohort studies worldwide with uranium miners. So information on potential outcomes is obtained from regular mortality follow-ups. These are passive mortality follow-ups without contact to the persons, and they are conducted every 5 years, have been conducted from 1998. And very fresh data, I will show you some numbers of, so the follow-up until end of 2018 has just been completed. And in this follow-up, we have so until end of 2018, there are around 40% of the persons still alive in the cohort. Almost 57% are deceased and 3.4% are lost to follow-up. And we put really very much and huge effort into those follow-up projects, because we think we would like to ensure the highest possible data quality. And on the other hand, which data do we have about risk factors? So here you can see potential risk factors for uranium miners, and exposure to radiation and dust was retrospectively obtained based on job exposure matrices. This means that we have individual annual estimates for all persons in our cohort on radiation. Radiation means radon and radon progeny, external gamma radiation, and long-lived radionuclides. And we have also information on fine dust, silica dust, and arsenic dust. Here you can quickly have an impression of the exposure patterns in the cohort. In the first years after the Second World War, the exposures were very large, and now with the introduction of radiation protection measures in the 1960s, 1970s, exposures were much, much lower. Okay, so now let's come to the research on health effects in the Wismut cohort, with the cohort. Of course, the cohort has been ongoing for more than 20 years now, and you can see that a huge amount of research has been done. This is just an overview of the research with main contribution by BfS members. There has also been a lot of research with external partners in international projects, but it was not possible for me to get an overview of this. That's why I just put you here the mainly internal research. The main exposure, the response relationship of interest in uranium miners is the radon-related lung cancer risk. There were some very important contributions, but of course, there was also research on other outcomes related to radon, also on silica dust-related health effects. And what I would really like to mention here is also that, of course, we looked at all radiation exposures and other radiation exposures than radon. And there are some organ doses available for specific organs, and they were obtained to get calculated by dosimetrists. That's our link to the dosimetry group. And here you can see that there have been a very important publications also on radiation-related risks for cancers other than lung cancer.
2 minutes left, Nora.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God. Okay, so now projects in progress. We are a very nice group at the moment, and we are currently working on 3 internal projects. So radon-related health risks other than lung cancer, silica dust-related health risks, and we also have a PhD student who works on lifetime risks by radon in the Wismut cohort. We are also working at the moment in very interesting international and external projects, and we have external project departmental research on exposure uncertainties. So the pooled uranium miners analysis is, I think, at the moment, very important project. And now this is all about classical epidemiology. Now let's come to the molecular epidemiology. Since 2008, the BfS has established the German Uranium Miners Biobank, and the responsible scientist for this is Maria Gomolka. She's also here today, so if you have questions, I hope that she can answer them. Here, just a few words about the biomaterials which are available. We have on the one hand materials about healthy uranium miners. This is on the right-hand side in the green box. We have materials from blood samples. You can see the materials below. And on the other hand, in the red box, you can see we have materials from lung cancer patients, former uranium miners. And there is the most important part is this FFPE tumor and non-tumor tissue, which is formalin-fixed, paraffin-embedded tumor and normal tissue, and then all those biomaterials. And what is very important about this, for all those uranium miners, there's also information on exposure. So it is possible to link the exposure information to those biomaterials. And this makes this biobank very interesting for future research. And I think this is a very interesting and exciting project. Thank you very much for your interest. I hope this was interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, we probably have some of you back for detailed talks on one topic. This is to introduce sort of research lines, and I think this is very exciting. Let me see, is there anybody who wants to ask a question? Please speak up, because we are now almost 60 people. It's not so easy to see. You know, what I want to know is about specific plans on genetics. You know, there have been a couple of science papers in radiation recently, which is really great. They have been on the genetics of radiation effects and stuff. So is there any one particular study in using the biobank that you could very briefly describe so that we get an idea what you're planning?
So this question
Maybe.
I would like to hand over to Maria. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Maria.
I'm sorry, I cannot start the video, so I cannot appear somehow.
Yeah, just
okay. Of course, you mentioned these studies, especially from the thyroid cancer studies, what were now up to date. And of course, it's also in our mind right now that we are planning to analyze especially the FFPE material to see if we can identify mutagenetic signatures. And the problem here is, of course, that the material is really very old and is of low quality, but nevertheless, we have collaboration partners working on that. And they really managed to do next generation sequencing also in this kind of material. And I'm just awaiting the results in squamous cell carcinoma from these collaboration partners right now. They analyzed now about 100 minors with lung cancer from lung cancer tissue, normal tissue. And so we will see if we could identify here also something. And another project, which is also using next generation sequencing, is in the minors where we collected the blood samples. We really looked then, we wanted to look if we can identify something which gives a hint to leukemia. And here there are also new publications out which are based on the clonal expansion theory. And this is something what we try to look here also, if we can identify driver genes in that blood samples and can link it to clonal expansion and give them maybe a link also to the epidemiological results on the increased risk of myeloid leukemia.
Very interesting. It's great. It's a great resource, I think. Okay, and no good epidemiological results without good dosimetry. Thank you, Nora and Maria, for the presentation. And we move on to the dosimetry talk by Dr. Giussani. The floor is yours.
So,
yes,
thank
very
you.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much. As Michaela already said in her introductory presentation, I am the head of the dosimetry group in BfS, which belongs to a different department from the other colleagues that are talking today. It's in the medical and occupational radiation protection department, and our main activity is about assessment and evaluation of exposure of population and selected group of patients, and continuous development of dosimetric and quality assurance methodologies for medical applications, as well as for dose assessment in case of occupational exposures. In practice, we perform physico-technical and dosimetric assessment for X-rays based diagnostic applications, for example, using the anthropomorphic phantoms that you see in the picture here. One issue that we investigate is the dose efficiency of new imaging technologies, looking for a balance between good image quality and exposure of the patients. We are involved in the definition and updating of diagnostic reference levels, which are further optimization tools used in medical applications. And in case of radiopharmaceuticals, nuclear medicine, we also evaluate new substances with regard to biokinetic and dosimetry. And we have a special focus on a selected group of patients, specifically a radiation-sensitive group of patients, like, for example, embryo and fetus in case of exposure of the mother at different stages of the pregnancy. For occupational exposure, we perform calculations of those coefficients, retention and excretion functions for the interpretation of monitoring measurements. And on top of all these activities, we also have a quite strict collaboration with the other groups in BfS, and we perform dosimetry and support the research for the radiation biology group, for radon dosimetry, and also in epidemiological, as also make dosimetry for epidemiological studies. I myself, I'm been working now for 25 years or even more in internal dosimetry, and internal dosimetry is especially in for the situation of the Wismut cohort an important part of the dose which is needed. And actually internal dosimetry means the study of how substances distributes in the body and how they deliver dose in the different organs of the body. Internal doses need to be calculated on the basis of the model, and so we have models like the one you see here on your left side, where you simulate or calculate with these models the distribution of substances in the body. Each box represents one organ or tissue or a different combination of organs, and the arrows represent the transfer of material, of radioactivity between the organs. And with the results that you obtain with this model, you can then calculate the doses to the different organs by using, for example, realistic anthropomorphic models for the calculation of the radiation transport within the body. And we implement these models, but we also develop our own models, and we validate also on international level in the frame of our international activities.
You have 1 more minute.
Specifically for epidemiological studies, we have participated or are participating in international research projects in collaboration with Michaela, Nora, and her colleagues. We were in the CURE project. We are now active in the IPAU and in the RadonNorm project. One activity we are performing now is a re-evaluation of the exposure database in order to better characterize the individual exposure features, so to better apply the correct dosimetric factors for the different workers and try to reduce uncertainty. Uncertainties are a very big issues in epidemiological, also in general in dosimetry, internal dosimetry specifically, because the models we have seen before, they are mainly mathematical models, they are simplification or very complex processes, and so there are a lot of uncertainties both on the model structure and also because the data available for the identification of those models are not very, there are not many data for the identification. We have had in the last years a project, we had funding the project with external groups working on it. The project was conducted at KIT, Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. The coordinator was Bastian Breusted, and we actually the focus was to assess the dosimetric and biokinetic uncertainties, the contribution of the biokinetic and dosimetric uncertainties on the exposure and dose assessment for the Wismut cohort. So you see here, for example, the results for Miller's exposed with 4 different exposure situation, uranium ore and uranium concentrate with both MAD of 7 or 10 micrometer. And what is given here is the doses to different internal organs. And you see that the doses may be different, but considering the uncertainties are very large. So the definition of the exposure situation is not that critical for the evaluation of the dose to the organs, and the dose to the organs are in general interesting for the definition of secondary cancer in or not the main cancer in the epidemiological studies. And
the time is over.
Yes, I finished. So the current activities are the application of the dosimetric protocols and development of a specific model for embryo and fetus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for being a bit pushy, but otherwise we don't squeeze these in. Thank you very much. Also, a lot of projects, which I think each of one is highly complex. Are there any questions to Dr. Giussani? Okay, then in the interest of time, I suggest we move on to the last talk. Thank you very much, Dr. Giussani.
Thank you, welcome.
The last talk, we switch gears a little bit. We move to non-ionizing radiation. And we also move to the eastern part of Germany, from Munich to Cottbus, closer to where I am. And Peter Scholz-Kreisel is presenting the activities of the BfS with regard to electromagnetic fields and other non-ionizing radiation. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So,
presentation mode, please, and then we are all set.
So now you see it in presentation mode, I hope?
Yes, very good.
Okay, thank you very much for the short introduction. I'm Peter Scholz-Kreisel. I'm since about 1.5 years head of the Radiation Epidemiology and Risk Assessment Group. And yes, we are talking about EMF, but I'm sitting in Munich. But you're right, Michael, the competence center of EMF is sitting in Cottbus. So EMF research is actually a task at the BfS since the beginning. EMF was already a topic at 1989 when the EMF was, the BfS was founded, as we heard before from Michaela. And this is due to the large social, one of the aspects is due to the large social concerns, especially, for example, with mobile phones, with expansion of 5G, which is a large topic here in Germany, and also the energy transition to get to away from coal and nuclear power. We are in need to build large high voltage power lines, and there's a lot of concern in this. And therefore, the BfS started several research programs to handle these issues. For example, the research program on German mobile telecommunication from 2002 to 2009, or in 2017 started research program on radiation protection, the process of power grid expansion, which is still ongoing. And to focus this research and the work on EMF, in 2020, the Competence Center for Electromagnetic Fields, shortly KEMF, was founded, and this Competence Center is settled in the eastern of Germany in Cottbus. The Competence Center is led by Dr. Gundit Ziegelberger for the part of research and assessment, and by Dr. Christian Raupach for the communication and information part. They have a lot of tasks to do on the side of the scientific questions, on identification of uncertainties and open questions, attend a lot of projects to push up more research in the EMF area, but also on communication with stakeholder, with public, to ensure a good and scientific-based communication on the fields of EMF and health. So let's give you a short view on the large running project on power grids. There is already a good knowledge of health effects and that they are quite good prevented by the existing thresholds in law in Germany. Thus, there's some uncertainties still left, and these uncertainties do regularly lead to discussions. So the BfS decided to initiate an own research program on that topic by at first reviewing the scientific publications and scientific data on what questions are still unsolved. And thus, in terms of a good transparency in this project, we did a lot of public consultation, expert workshops to see if these topics that are identified by us are also topics of interest by the public and by the experts. End of day, we had 36 individual research projects in 8 areas, from biology, from dosimetry, communications, and of course on epidemiology. There are 8 epidemiologic projects in the power grid expansion program. 1 is already finished, 4 are going to be tendered, I will show you in a second, and 2 are cancelled due to new data that weren't needed anymore. So 4 projects are coming up.
2 more minutes.
At first, the meta-analysis on association between ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and magnetic fields is just coming to tender, so stay tuned for that research opportunity. Hopefully it will come at the beginning of 2022. Another really important project and really interesting project is the feasibility study on leukemia, childhood leukemia, which is a large concern in the public area, and exposure from train power facilities, from train power lines, due to the more upcoming electrification of trains. And also this is a project in terms of tendering, and hopefully will come in March 22. 2 other projects that are not dated today, but in the backhand for coming up, is the pooling on childhood leukemia and exposure of combined exposure of magnetic fields and low-level ionizing radiation, due to the idea, because maybe if one of is not enough, but the combination can lead to problems, especially in that group of children. And another project we are going to start is the project on magnetic fields and in maybe an increased risk of miscarriages. So let's change from the low frequencies to the high frequencies, to the mobile phones and to the communications tools. And I want to show you shortly one result of a tendered project, of a departmental research project, just in the terms of finishing the GLIMORI project on mobile phones and the development of glioma incidence. This was done by the International Agency of Research on Cancer, namely by Isabel Daltu and Joachim Schütz, which took the chance of the project and made a really nice and good research task here. The goal of the program was the analysis of glioma incidence in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden by joint point analysis, and ecologic and modeling and risk analysis for the hypothetical risk estimates and risk increases. Due to types of time, I want to show you only one result, so the result on glioma incidence. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the logarithmic trend of the glioma incidences are quite different for the age groups. For the younger age groups, 20 to 39 years or 40 to 59 years, the orange and the green dots, there's quite no increase in the incidence, as well for men as for women. Thus, in the older age groups, in the 60 to 69, or in the group 70 to 84, the red and the blue dots, we do see an increase. with the oldest age group in blue, we also see some breaking points. Thus, these breaking points are very early in the early 90s, so before the widespread of mobile phones. So this obviously increase seemed to be reasoned in other points like better diagnostics or better therapies and yeah, such things.
We are now using the time for questions.
Oh, okay. Then let's shortly. We are going to investigate on one own research for the Cosmos study. The Cosmos is a cohort study, a prospective cohort study on mobile phone use, and we are going to start a German Cosmos study with a planned 50,000 participants embedded in the German national cohort. We do on acute effects, on long-term effects, and especially on monitoring the use and use behavior of persons. And so let's give you a short perspective of the timeline. We are in phase 0, and hopefully in 2024, we are starting with the main research and main study, and 2026 with a full rollout on 50,000 persons to implement them in the study. And this with that short group, I will finish and keen on your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice, and good that you presented this big study. In the end, are there any questions about any of the projects? I see the hand of Rania.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Peter. That was a really good presentation. I have a question. In one of your slides on the low frequency EMF, you presented 4 epi studies that are either close to completion or underway. Can you give us a sense of the size of these studies? How big of a population you're following?
These are projects that are going to be tendered. All projects are in terms of meta-analysis or in terms of pooled analysis. And the size of the project determines on the available populations or the available study groups which are going to put a request for research on the project. So we are tendering those projects, and hopefully good cohorts will send their ideas for research, so we can tender to fund them. So I cannot tell you on the size of the project because we don't know it yet.
And are these tenders open internationally?
Partly yes.
Okay.
Partly yes. I cannot tell you exactly now which one.
Okay. Is there another question for Peter? If that's not the case, I want to thank everybody. I think one big achievement is that we squeezed these talks into 1 hour and you know, stayed in time, and everybody had his or her 8 minutes. Thanks a lot. And as I said, I would really like to have some of these projects back for a half hour or 45-minute scientific discussion, so that we can all learn how these studies are done. There is in 15 minutes a roundtable discussion for early career research where they can meet the presenters. The link is in the chat. Thank you, Sarah. And the next seminar will be hosted by RERF, the next ISoRED webinar, and it will be in January, and you will all get the announcement when we have fixed the date. And before we close, I want to thank Rania for really perfect organization of everything. These meetings are really nice to moderate because everything is done by Rania. And with that, I want to thank her again, also taking into account that it is night in DC, where the National Academy of Science are. Thank you very much to all the speakers, and please come back for the next ISoRED seminar. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Goodbye.
Bye.